Mary lived in a small town called Betrayal. It was a warm and sunny place. The birds sang sweet songs every morning, and the sky was often filled with soft, white clouds. Mary liked to wake up early and smell the fresh air. She always said, "Today is a new day to be kind." Mary was a cheerful woman with bright eyes and a gentle smile. She had long, dark hair that she tied in a neat ponytail most days. She wore simple dresses with little flowers printed on them. Mary loved flowers. She found them beautiful, just like she found the whole world beautiful. One day, Mary walked through the town square. She stopped to wave hello to Mrs. Green, the baker with kind brown eyes. Mary said, "Good morning, Mrs. Green. How are you today?" Mrs. Green smiled and replied, "I am well, dear Mary. Would you like to try a new cinnamon roll I made?" Mary's eyes shone with excitement. She took a small bite of the cinnamon roll, and her face lit up. "This is so tasty." "Thank you, Mrs. Green," Mary said. "You always know how to make wonderful treats." Next, Mary passed by Mr. Brown, who sold fruit at a colorful stand. She carefully picked a juicy red apple. She placed a coin in his hand. "Good morning, Mr. Brown," she said. "I hope your day is bright and happy." Mr. Brown nodded. "Thank you, Mary. You always bring a smile to my face." Mary continued walking, feeling happy that she could share a kind word. She saw children playing with a ball in the street. One boy fell and scraped his knee, so Mary hurried to help him up. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. The boy nodded with tears in his eyes. Mary gently wiped away his tears and said, "You will be okay. I will help you clean your knee." The boy felt better, and soon, he was back to playing. Mary loved to help. She found great joy in caring for others and did not think much about herself. But something felt different that day. A cold wind blew in the afternoon, and gray clouds hid the sun. Mary looked at the sky and felt a strange feeling in her heart. She could not tell what it was, but it made her feel worried. She shook her head and whispered to herself, "Maybe it is just the weather. Everything will be fine." Mary decided to visit her best friend, Anna. Anna lived near the edge of town, where a quiet, winding road led to a small hill. Anna's house had a bright blue door and a red roof. Mary knocked 3 times. Anna opened the door with a grin. "Mary, come in. I just made tea. Let's have some together." Inside Anna's cozy living room, Mary sat on a soft chair. She sipped warm tea, feeling a little better. She and Anna chatted about many small things, flowers, food, and their dreams for the future. Anna noticed Mary did not look as cheerful as usual. She asked, "Is something on your mind, Mary? You seem worried." Mary shrugged. "I am not sure. I just feel like something is going to change. Something big." Anna patted Mary's hand. "No matter what happens, you will face it with courage." "You are the kindest person I know," Anna said. Mary smiled at Anna's kind words. She wanted to believe everything would stay peaceful, but the worry in her heart stayed. As Mary walked home, the sun had almost set. A golden glow shone on the rooftops. The houses seemed friendly, but Mary's steps were slow. She felt a small ache in her heart and wondered if tomorrow would still be bright. That night, Mary could not sleep well. She stared at the ceiling of her small, tidy bedroom. She thought about her day. She thought about her future. She did not understand why she felt uneasy, but she trusted that her gentle spirit would guide her in the right direction. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I hope tomorrow will bring happy moments. I hope I can keep being kind to everyone." But the truth was, her life was about to change. Something from her past would soon come knocking on her door, and Mary's cheerful world would never be the same again. The next morning, Mary woke up early as usual. Sunlight peeked through her window, and she stretched her arms. She remembered her strange worry from the day before, but she tried to brush it away. "Smile, Mary," she said to herself. Today is a new day. She quickly made breakfast, 2 slices of toast and a cup of warm milk. Then she cleaned her small kitchen. The walls were painted light blue, and there was a shelf of shiny dishes. She liked to keep everything neat. After breakfast, she stepped outside. The air was fresh, and she waved to her neighbors. She walked down the cobblestone path, planning to visit the market to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. As she rounded the corner, she bumped into Mr. Harris, the town's postman. Mr. Harris said, "Oh, Mary, I have a letter for you. It looks important." He handed her a pale envelope with her name on it. Mary looked at the writing. It was neat, but she did not recognize who sent it. She thanked Mr. Harris and walked to a small bench under a large oak tree to open the letter. The letter said, "Dear Mary, I am writing to you after many years. I have something important to tell you about your past. I need to meet you soon. Please come to the old cottage by Pine Lake tomorrow at noon. From someone who knows." Mary's hands trembled. The words made her heart race. She thought, who could this be? What do they know about my past? She looked around, feeling a sudden rush of worry. She remembered living in a different town when she was younger. She remembered some not-so-happy times. She also remembered leaving that place to start a fresh life in Betrayal. Mary was kind and gentle, but she had secrets she never shared with anyone. She folded the letter carefully and put it in her bag. She did not feel like going to the market anymore. Instead, she walked slowly back home. Once inside her house, she sat at her small wooden table. She placed the letter in front of her and stared at it. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each second made her feel more uneasy. She whispered, "What should I do? Should I go to Pine Lake? Should I ignore this letter?" Then she remembered what a friend once told her. Sometimes, the best way to face the future is to face the past first. Mary felt that maybe she had run from her past for too long. She decided that she would go to Pine Lake, even though it scared her. The next day, Mary woke up with a heavy heart. She had promised to meet this mysterious person at noon. She dressed in a simple white dress. She combed her hair neatly. Then she set off down the road that led out of Betrayal. The walk to Pine Lake was not very long, but it felt like it took forever. She passed by rolling hills and tall trees. She smelled wildflowers in the gentle breeze. But her mind was on the letter. At last, she reached the old cottage by the lake. The cottage was made of gray stones and the roof looked worn. The wooden door had cracks from age. She saw no one around. The lake behind the cottage was calm, with water so clear you could see fish swimming. Mary's heart beat faster. She knocked on the door softly. Knock, knock. No answer. She waited a moment, then she knocked again. This time, a voice from inside said, "Come in." Mary turned the handle and stepped in. The cottage was dark and smelled musty. She saw a small table and 2 chairs. Sitting at the table was a figure in a long coat, face partly hidden under a hood. Mary said, "Hello. I got your letter." The figure slowly lifted their head. Mary saw a pair of sharp eyes, filled with sadness and maybe regret. The person spoke in a trembling voice, "Mary, do you remember me?" Mary shook her head slowly, but a hint of recognition tugged at her memory. Suddenly, a name flashed in her mind. It was a name from a time she tried to forget. She gasped softly. Could it really be them? She did not speak the name out loud, but she stood still, eyes wide. The person sighed and said, "I have done many wrong things. I need to tell you the truth about what happened all those years ago." Mary felt her hands shaking at her sides. She wanted to run away, but a part of her also wanted to know more. She said in a quiet voice, "Please, tell me." The person nodded, took a deep breath and began. "It all started the day you left that town." The cottage walls seemed to close in. The silence was thick. Mary's life was about to change, and she had no idea just how different things would become once she learned the truth. Mary sat across the table, her eyes fixed on the hooded figure. The person spoke in a low voice. "I know you remember the night of the storm, when you lost everything," they said. "I was there. I saw what happened. I should have helped you, but I did not." Mary's heart hurt. Memories of a dark night filled with rain, thunder, and tears rushed back. She tried to push them away, but the figure's words brought them to life. She clenched her hands together. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you telling me this now?" The person answered, "Because I have carried guilt for many years. I caused you pain. I want to say I am sorry." Mary closed her eyes. She remembered her old home in a faraway town. She remembered losing a part of herself after that storm. She remembered feeling hurt by the people who turned their backs on her. But she had no idea that the hooded figure was one of them. She said, "I was alone and afraid. No one came to help me. I had to start a new life by myself." The figure lowered their head. "I know," they whispered, "and I can never fix the past. But I want to make things right." Mary felt tears come to her eyes. She had spent years hiding from those memories. She worked hard to become a kind person, hoping that kindness could make her forget the pain. But now, all the hurt came rushing back. In a trembling voice, she asked, "What do you want from me?" The figure took out a small, old key. It looked rusty and worn. "This key opens a chest," they said. "Inside the chest is something that belongs to you." Mary stared at the key. She did not know what it could be for. "A chest? Where?" she asked. The figure explained, "It is still in our old town. It is hidden in the place where you once lived. It holds items that could help you understand the truth about what happened back then." Mary felt anger and sadness bubbling in her heart. She did not want to remember the day she lost everything. But part of her wanted answers. She asked, "Why now? Why not years ago?" The figure sighed, their voice cracking, "Because I was a coward. I was afraid to face you. But time has passed, and my guilt has grown too heavy to carry. Please forgive me. Let me help you get back what was stolen from you." Mary looked at the key again. Her mind was full of questions. She did not trust this person, but her desire for the truth was strong. She took the key in her hand and felt the cold metal on her palm. She stood up, her legs shaky. "I will think about it," she said. "I need time." The figure nodded and said, "I understand. I will wait for you in the Old Town Church 2 days from now. If you decide to come, find me there." Mary turned and left the cottage. She walked quickly, her eyes full of tears. She felt confused and angry and sad all at once. The world outside looked too bright for her troubled heart. She sat on a rock by Pine Lake and stared at her reflection in the water. A little girl wearing a pink dress skipped by with her mother. The girl laughed as she played with a small paper boat. Mary watched them and felt a deep longing for a simple, happy life. She whispered to herself, "I tried so hard to be free from the past. Why must it come back now?" When Mary finally returned to Betrayal, she went straight to Anna's house. Anna was in her garden, watering bright yellow flowers. She saw Mary's tearful eyes and ran over. "Mary, what happened? Are you hurt?" she asked with concern. Mary shook her head. "Not hurt on the outside," she said quietly. "But my heart hurts. I found out something about my past. I do not know what to do." Anna guided Mary inside. They sat on a soft couch. Mary told Anna everything about the letter, the cottage, and the key. Anna listened with care, her hand on Mary's shoulder. When Mary finished, Anna said softly, "I can see this troubles you. But you're strong. You can face your past if you choose to do so. And remember, you do not have to face it alone. I will stand by you." Mary felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I must decide if I should meet this person again in 2 days. They want me to go back to the old town." Anna hugged Mary gently. "Take your time. I will support whatever you decide." Mary left Anna's house feeling a little better. That night, she lay in bed looking at the small, rusty key. She rolled it between her fingers. She thought about how she had buried her old memories under years of kindness and smiles. Now, those memories were knocking on her heart's door, and she did not know if she should open it. As she drifted off to sleep, she whispered into the dark, "I want the truth, but I am so afraid of what it might be." The moon rose high in the sky, shining silver light into Mary's bedroom. In 2 days, her life would take another turn. She would either walk away from the past forever or face it once more. The next morning, Mary woke up feeling tired. She had not slept well. Her dreams were tangled with images of the hooded figure and the old storm she tried so hard to forget. She rose from bed and slowly got dressed. She took extra time to brush her hair, as if the gentle strokes could calm her worried mind. Then, she prepared a simple breakfast of porridge and hot tea. While she ate, she thought about what she would do. The hooded figure wanted her to return to the old town in 2 days. That meant she had a full day to decide. She still felt torn inside. A part of her did not want to face the place where so much had gone wrong. But another part of her knew she might never find peace if she did not see what was in that chest. After breakfast, Mary went outside. She wanted to keep busy, so she walked to Mrs. Green's bakery to help wrap fresh bread. Working with her hands always brought her a sense of calm. Mrs. Green greeted her with a bright smile. "Mary, dear." "So good to see you," Mrs. Green said, handing her a clean apron. "You look a little pale. Everything all right?" Mary nodded slowly. "I am just thinking about something important. But I will be fine." Mrs. Green understood that Mary did not want to share more, so she just patted Mary's arm. "You always help me so much here," she said gently. Mary smiled back, thankful for the friendly atmosphere of the bakery. The smell of fresh dough, sugar, and cinnamon filled the air. She helped place loaves of bread on the shelves and arranged sweet pastries in trays. A few hours later, she left the bakery and walked around the town. She passed the school where children were laughing during recess. She passed the library where people quietly read books. She passed the small park where old men played chess. Bryvale was so peaceful, so different from her old home. She sat by the town fountain, listening to the water trickle. She looked at her reflection in the clear pool. She thought, if I go back, will I become the sad, lonely person I used to be? Or will I become stronger? A memory flashed in her mind. She was younger, standing in the rain, banging on a locked door, tears mixing with the cold raindrops. No one let her in. That memory made her heart ache. Suddenly, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. It was Anna. "I had a feeling you would be here," Anna said. "I brought you a sandwich." Mary gave a weak smile. "Thank you," she said. She took the sandwich and nibbled on it. It had cheese and tomatoes, her favorite. Anna sat next to her and asked softly, "Have you decided yet?" Mary sighed. "I am still not sure. I want to find out the truth. But I also fear it." Anna placed a warm hand on Mary's. "Sometimes, finding the truth can set us free from our worries," she said kindly. "Whatever you choose, I will support you." That evening, Mary returned to her small house. She tried to read a book, but her mind wandered. She stared at the key on the table. It was a symbol of the past and a sign of the future. She had dinner alone, a small bowl of soup and a slice of bread. Afterwards, she stood by her window, looking at the stars. She remembered how she used to dream of a big, bright future, full of love and happiness. Did that future still exist for her? Finally, Mary made up her mind. She whispered to the quiet room, "I will go." The next day, Mary packed a few things in a small bag. She took a change of clothes, some bread, a bottle of water, and the key. She wore sturdy shoes for the journey. She told Anna she had made her decision, and Anna promised to check on Mary's house while she was away. Early in the morning, Mary left Bryvale. The road to her old town was not very long, but it felt heavy with memories. She passed rolling fields of tall grass that swayed in the wind. She heard birds chirping overhead. Sometimes the beauty of nature made her forget her troubles for a moment. As noon approached, she saw the outskirts of her old town. The buildings looked smaller and more worn than she remembered. A surge of fear and sadness passed through her. She thought about turning back, but she pressed on. At last, she spotted the church bell tower rising above the rooftops. She walked down a familiar street with cracked pavement. Her steps felt heavy. She remembered the laughter of childhood friends and the shame of that stormy night. She reached the church, a tall stone building with stained glass windows. She pushed open the wooden door and stepped inside. The smell of old books and wax candles filled her nose. The light coming through the colored glass made bright patterns on the floor. There, seated on a bench, was the hooded figure. They lifted their head and stood up when they saw Mary. No one else was inside the church. It felt strangely quiet. Mary clutched the key in her hand. She took a deep breath and walked over to the figure. "I came," she said simply. The figure nodded, removing the hood. The face beneath was older than Mary remembered, with lines of regret around the eyes. "Thank you for coming," they said. "I know this was not easy." Mary looked at the face she had once known from afar, back when she was a frightened girl. It was a face she had never expected to see again. Her heart pounded. She asked in a firm voice, "Take me to the chest." The figure nodded. "Follow me." They walked out of the church together, the figure leading the way. Mary followed with her heart pounding. She did not know what she would find, or how it would change her. All she knew was that her life was spinning in a direction she had never planned. The warm, bright world she had built in Betrayal was now behind her, and the shadow of the past loomed large. Yet, somewhere deep inside, Mary felt a spark of courage. She told herself, "I have come this far. I can face whatever lies ahead." They walked through narrow streets lined with old, faded houses. Broken shutters swung lazily on squeaky hinges. The wind whistled softly, adding to the eerie feeling of this once bustling place. Mary remembered running through these streets as a child, chasing after a ragged ball. Back then, laughter filled the air. Now, only silence remained. The hooded figure stopped in front of a small house with a tilted fence and chipped paint. Mary recognized it instantly. It was her old home. A wave of memories crashed over her. She remembered the tree in the front yard where she used to climb. She remembered a tiny kitten that she once found by the steps. She remembered the smell of homemade soup from the kitchen. But most of all, she remembered the horrible night. Dark clouds, heavy rain, lightning flashing in the sky. She remembered people shouting and doors slamming shut. She remembered the loneliness. Tears pricked her eyes as she stood there, breathing heavily. The figure turned to Mary. "The chest is inside," they said. "We have to go to the cellar." Mary nodded, though her heart pounded wildly. She followed them up the creaky steps onto the sagging porch. The front door was slightly open, revealing darkness within. They entered slowly. Dust floated in the air. The furniture was gone, leaving only shadows and broken memories. Mary's footsteps echoed in the empty rooms. She swallowed hard and tried to keep her composure. They reached the door to the cellar, a small wooden hatch on the floor in the back room. The figure lifted it, and a musty smell wafted out. A narrow set of stairs led down into darkness. Mary went down first, gripping the banister. Each step felt like it carried her deeper into the past. Her hands trembled as she reached the bottom. The figure followed, holding a small lantern that lit the gloom. In the corner of the cellar stood an old trunk covered in cobwebs. It looked like it had not been touched in many years. Mary's heart twisted at the sight. The figure pointed. "That is the chest," they said quietly. Mary stepped closer, brushing away the cobwebs. She saw a lock, rusted and worn by time. Her shaky fingers found the key she carried. She held it up to the lantern light. Then, with a deep breath, she fit the key into the lock. It turned with a slow click. The lock fell away, and the trunk opened with a creak. Inside, Mary found a few items wrapped in old cloth. Her hands shook as she lifted them out. She saw a small diary, its cover torn at the edges. She saw a necklace with a tiny heart charm. And she saw a photograph of a girl with bright eyes and a shy smile. It was her younger self. Mary felt tears rolling down her cheeks. She carefully opened the diary. The pages were yellowed. She recognized her own handwriting from long ago. It was filled with notes about her days, her dreams, and her hopes. There were also sad scribbles from the stormy night, the night she lost everything. She whispered, I thought all of this was gone." The figure spoke softly. "I found them the day after the storm. I kept them safe, but I was too afraid to give them back. I did not know how to face you." Mary held the necklace in her hand. She remembered how her mother gave it to her on her 10th birthday. It was a small silver heart that made her feel loved. Losing it had felt like losing that love. She clutched it to her chest, tears falling freely now. Memories flooded back of her mother's gentle touch, of laughter, of warm moments by the fireplace. Then came the memory of her mother's death soon after the storm, leaving Mary truly alone. She turned to the figure, her voice tight with emotion. "Why did you not help me? Why did you watch me suffer?" The figure lowered their eyes. "I was scared," they admitted. "My family told me not to get involved. I was weak. I stayed silent, and for that, I am sorry." Mary felt anger flare inside her like a hot flame. "Sorry," she repeated, her voice trembling. "You were my neighbor. You knew me. You saw me out in the storm, and you shut the door. How can I forgive that?" The figure had tears in their eyes too. "I understand your anger," they said. "I understand if you never forgive me. But I want you to have these belongings. They are yours. I want you to know the truth. No one in the town hated you. We were just afraid. We feared the rumors, the lightning, the danger. That night changed everything, and it became easier to blame you for things you never did." Mary's tears came faster. She remembered the rumors, how people whispered that bad luck followed her, how they blamed her for the storm's damage. She had done nothing wrong, but they pushed her away all the same. She pressed the diary and necklace to her chest. Slowly, she stood up and wiped her tears. "I do not know if I can forgive you," she said honestly. "But thank you for keeping these safe." The figure nodded, their shoulders slumped with shame. "I wish I had been braver. I wish I had helped you. If I had, maybe your life would have been different." Mary turned away, looking at the dusty cellar walls. Her mind whirled with emotions, sorrow, anger, regret, and also a strange relief. She had found a piece of her past she thought was lost forever. After a long silence, she closed the trunk. She placed her diary and necklace into her bag and stood up. The figure followed her up the creaky stairs and out into the house's dark halls. Before they left, Mary took one last look at the empty rooms. She whispered goodbye to the ghost of her former self. Then, with slow steps, she walked out of the house. She felt the sunlight touch her face as she stepped onto the porch. It felt both comforting and harsh. The figure stood beside her. They looked at Mary with a mixture of hope and sadness. "What will you do now?" they asked. Mary looked at the sky. Clouds drifted across it, reminding her of that storm long ago. She felt something change within her. A seed of resolve took root in her heart. She looked back at the figure, her face calm but determined. "I will not be the same," she said. "I have carried this pain for too long. Now that I know the truth, now that I have these memories back, I cannot simply go back to how I was. Something in me is changing." The figure nodded, unsure of what that change meant. Mary herself did not fully know, but she felt that the past had opened a new path for her. With slow steps, Mary began to walk away from the old house, from the street where she grew up, from the memories that had haunted her. The figure watched her go, unsure if she would ever turn back. And indeed, Mary did not look back. She only looked forward, wondering what her next step would be. Mary stayed in the old town that night. She found a small inn near the church, a place with creaky floors and worn quilts on the beds. The innkeeper was a kind older woman who gave Mary a gentle smile. "You look tired, dear," the innkeeper said, handing Mary a key to a modest room on the second floor. "Please rest well." Mary thanked her quietly and went upstairs. The room had a single bed and a small window that overlooked the dark street below. She placed her bag on a chair, then sat on the bed, feeling the weight of the day. She took out her old diary and opened it carefully. Her younger handwriting danced across the pages, talking about simple joys, a funny bird she saw, a new recipe her mother tried, a doll she made from scraps of cloth. But then the pages turned darker, describing the storm, the fear, and the loneliness. Mary traced the words with her fingertip. A tear slipped down her cheek as she read, remembering how alone she felt then. Now, she was back in this town, but something was different. She was different. She no longer felt like that powerless girl. She had grown strong in Brightvale, even if she had tried to bury the past. She closed the diary and looked at her mother's necklace. The tiny heart charm sparkled faintly in the lantern light. She whispered, "Mother, I wish you were here." Sighing, she stood and walked to the window. Outside, a couple of street lamps cast warm glows, but most of the town lay in shadows. She thought of the hooded figure. They had shown regret, but Mary still felt the sting of betrayal. She also felt something else, a growing sense of determination. I cannot keep living as the same Mary who runs away, she told herself. I need to find my own path. I need to become stronger. That night, Mary slept deeply, her dreams a swirl of past and present. By morning, she awoke with a calmness in her heart. She knew she could not stay in the old town. But she also did not want to return to Betrayal and pretend nothing had happened. She needed time to think, to find her true self. After a simple breakfast of bread and milk at the inn, she thanked the innkeeper and set out. She walked through the streets again, this time with more purpose. She passed the house where she had found the trunk. She passed the corner store that was now boarded up. She passed the old park where she used to play. She paused at the park gate. The swings were gone, the grass was overgrown, and the benches were broken. She felt a pang of sadness. She remembered her mother's laughter as they fed the birds. She remembered the bright daisies that used to grow by the path. With a heavy heart, she turned away. She said quietly goodbye. When she reached the edge of town, she saw the road that led back to Betrayal. She also saw another road winding to the north, past hills and valleys she did not know. A sense of adventure stirred in her. She did not want to return to Betrayal yet. She could not pretend to be the same, cheerful Mary without dealing with the changes inside her. So she chose the unknown road, stepping onto a path she had never walked before. The morning sun rose higher, warming her shoulders. She held her bag tightly, feeling the diary and necklace inside. They were her ties to the past, but also reminders of her strength. As she walked, her mind wandered. She thought of Anna, dear Anna, who had always been so supportive. She thought of Mrs. Green and Mr. Brown, her kind neighbors. Would they worry about her? Possibly, but Mary felt she needed this journey. She followed the road through rolling hills of green grass and wildflowers. The colors were vibrant, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of lavender. Birds fluttered overhead, calling out cheerful songs. Mary felt a little lighter. Around midday, she stopped by a small stream to rest. She drank some water and ate the bread she had brought. She thought about her old life and her new feelings. She sensed a hardness in her heart, a shield forming around the pain of her past. She was still kind, still gentle at her core, but she felt less willing to bend. I will not let anyone hurt me again, she said softly to herself. I will protect my heart. I will become someone who can stand strong, even if people fail me. She heard a rustle in the bushes behind her. A small rabbit hopped out, nose twitching. Mary smiled at the tiny creature. She held out a piece of bread, and the rabbit sniffed it before hopping away. Mary watched it go, a gentle sadness in her eyes. Kindness came so naturally to her, yet the memory of betrayal burned in her mind. She wondered how to keep her gentle nature while also protecting herself from future harm. With a sigh, she stood and continued her journey. By late afternoon, she found herself near a new village she had never visited before. It looked smaller than Betrayal, with just a few houses and farms. She saw a sign that read, "Welcome to Riverbend." Mary entered the village, not sure if she would stay. But she needed a place to sleep. She found a small inn and spoke to the innkeeper, a middle-aged man with a thin mustache. "Hello," Mary said politely. "Do you have a room for the night?" He nodded. "Yes, we do." "Come in," he replied. Mary paid for a simple room. As she climbed the stairs, she sensed that this place was peaceful, quiet, a good spot to pause and think. She set her things down and took a moment to look at herself in the mirror. Her eyes seemed different, a bit more serious, a bit more guarded. She touched her mother's necklace and felt a flash of old pain. Yet she also felt a new strength stirring. She remembered a story her mother told her when she was small. Hard times can make us stronger, like steel is forged in fire. Mary whispered, "Maybe I am forging myself now. Maybe I am becoming someone new." That evening, she ate a simple supper at the inn. She listened to villagers chat about local news, about weather, crops, and small joys. She realized she had no desire to share her story with them. She was tired of telling her past. She just wanted to figure out her future. Later, in her room, Mary lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Thoughts swirled in her mind. The old storm, the locked doors, the quiet church, the dusty trunk, the hooded figure's regret. Memories churned inside her, mixing with her longing for peace. She did not know exactly what she would do next, but she sensed that the biggest change was yet to come. She needed to heal, but she also needed to protect herself. Would her kindness remain, or would she grow cold like stone to shield her heart? As she slowly drifted to sleep, she whispered into the darkness, "Who am I becoming?" And in the quiet of the night, no answer came. Only the soft hum of the wind through the trees, carrying her into dreams of a future she could not yet see. The next morning, Mary woke early to the sound of birds outside her window. She sat up in bed, blinking away the lingering traces of sleep. She decided to explore Riverbend a little before she continued her journey. After a quick breakfast, she stepped out into the crisp morning air. The village had a single dirt road lined with simple houses. A small river ran behind the fields, its water sparkling in the early sunlight. People were up and about, tending to chores. Mary wandered past a farmhouse where a young woman was feeding chickens. The woman noticed Mary and smiled. "Good morning," she called. Mary offered a small smile in return. "Good morning," she replied softly. She felt a tug in her heart, remembering how she loved to chat with neighbors back in Betrayal. But now, she felt more distant, wary of getting too close to strangers. She politely moved along. Soon, she found a quiet spot by the river's edge. The water murmured softly as it flowed over smooth stones. Mary sat on a large rock, hugging her knees. She looked at the sky, feeling torn between her natural kindness and the anger still lodged in her heart. Suddenly, she heard a shout. "Help! Someone help!" Mary's head whipped around. A little boy stood on the riverbank, pointing frantically at a dog caught in the current. The dog struggled to keep its head above the rushing water. Without thinking, Mary jumped up. She ran along the bank until she was close to the dog. She kicked off her shoes and waded into the water, the cold rushing around her legs. Carefully, she moved deeper, trying not to slip. The dog was panicked, yelping for help. Mary reached out and grabbed the dog by its collar. The current pulled at her, but she pressed her feet against a firm stone and pulled the dog toward her. Bit by bit, she guided the poor animal to the shore. Once on land, the dog coughed and shook violently, water flying everywhere. Mary sat down, breathing hard, water dripping from her clothes. The boy rushed over, tears in his eyes, and hugged the dog. "Thank you, ma'am," he cried. "You saved Buddy." Mary managed a small smile, her heart pounding. "I am glad Buddy is safe," she said, petting the dog's wet fur. Just then, a young woman ran up. She had worry written all over her face. "Oh my goodness. Is Buddy all right?" "Are you hurt?" she asked, looking from Mary to the dog. Mary shook her head, shivering slightly. "I am fine. The dog is safe." The young woman knelt down, relief flooding her eyes. "Thank you so much for your help," she said. "I did not see the dog run off. He must have slipped into the water." Mary nodded. She felt a wave of warmth pass through her, reminding her of the goodness in saving someone else. Even though she was on her own path of change, a part of her still found joy in helping. The woman smiled kindly and introduced herself as Cora. "Please, let me help you dry off. My house is just over there." She pointed to a small cottage nearby. Mary hesitated. She did not want to get too close to anyone. But she was soaking wet and starting to feel cold. "All right," she agreed softly. Inside Cora's cozy cottage, Mary changed into some dry clothes that Cora offered. They were a bit big, but comfortable. Meanwhile, Cora made hot tea. The little boy, who was her cousin, sat near the fireplace with the dog, wrapped in a blanket. "Here, this will warm you up," Cora said, handing Mary a steaming cup. Mary took it gratefully. "Thank you," she said. She blew on the tea and took a careful sip. They sat quietly for a moment. Then Cora asked, "Where are you from?" Mary paused, fiddling with the teacup. I used to live in Bryvale. But I am traveling now, she replied, not wanting to share too many details. Cora nodded gently. I see. It is not often we get travelers here. Is your journey a long one? Mary shrugged, feeling a little uneasy. Yes. I am not sure where I am going yet. Cora did not pry. Instead, she smiled kindly. Well, sometimes we do not know our destination until we find it, she said softly. Anyway, thank you again for saving Buddy. If you need a place to rest, you can stay here tonight. Mary felt a surge of gratitude. This stranger was offering her kindness, much like she would have offered to others in the past. She sensed her own reluctance to open her heart. Yet, she still felt touched. Thank you, she answered. I have a room at the inn, but I appreciate your offer. I might come by again to say hello. Later, when Mary left the cottage, she felt torn inside. On one hand, it felt good to help and to receive kindness. On the other hand, she was scared. The memory of betrayal in her old town made her want to build walls around her heart. She returned to the inn, changed back into her original clothes, now dry, and spent the evening thinking. She remembered how saving the dog had been an instant reaction. She did not hesitate, even though she was frightened. That night, she looked at her mother's necklace again. She whispered, "Mother, I tried not to care, but I still do. I still want to help. I just do not want to be hurt." She thought of the hooded figure's apology, of the cruel townspeople who turned her away. She wondered if being kind again would leave her open to more pain. Her emotions raged inside her like a storm. She decided to stay in Riverbend for a few days to find a balance between her old kindness and her newfound need for self-protection. She helped Cora wash dishes at the cottage the next day. She offered to cook a simple meal. The little boy giggled as Mary told him small, funny stories, though she kept her past to herself. Quietly, she noticed how being kind made her feel warm inside, but she also felt a cool distance in her heart, like a shield. She smiled, but her smiles were smaller. She laughed, but the laughter felt subdued. One afternoon, while helping Cora in her garden, Mary paused to pick some lavender flowers. Their sweet scent drifted around her. She inhaled deeply, thinking about the future. She finally decided, I will keep going. I will see more of the world. And along the way, maybe I can decide who I really am now. When she told Cora she planned to move on, Cora was sad to see her go, but smiled encouragingly. May you find what you are searching for, she said, pressing a small bouquet of lavender into Mary's hands as a farewell gift. Mary thanked her and left Riverbend, carrying her bag and the flowers. She walked on, feeling neither fully happy nor fully sad. Instead, she felt a shifting in her soul, like the first sign of an approaching storm on a warm day. The path ahead lay open. Mary knew she was changing. She just did not know how far that change would go. Mary walked for days. Each night, she found a safe place to rest, be it a tiny inn, a friendly farmhouse, or a quiet clearing in the woods. She tried not to stay anywhere too long. She felt a restlessness in her spirit. She no longer smiled as easily at strangers. She kept to herself, speaking only when spoken to. Yet, she still offered help when needed. Once, she helped an older man gather scattered vegetables after his cart tipped over. Another time, she guided a lost child back to her parents at a roadside stop. But each act of kindness felt both right and painful. She remembered how her old town had turned on her, how the hooded figure had watched her suffer. Her heart still ached from the betrayal. She found herself thinking, I should not let my heart get attached to people. If I keep a distance, I cannot be hurt again. Yet, no matter how she tried, she could not push away her gentle nature entirely. After a few more days, Mary reached a new region. The landscape shifted to rolling hills covered in tall pine trees. The air smelled fresh, with a hint of mountain breeze. At sunset, she arrived at a bustling town called Pinecrest. It had wide, winding streets filled with travelers and local folks. The buildings were made of sturdy wood, and tall pine trees grew in every corner. Mary found a small inn called the Whispering Pines. She paid for a room and settled in for the night. The common room was full of chatter. People talked of trade, weather, and occasional bandits on the roads. Mary ate her dinner quietly, observing the bustle. In the morning, she stepped out to explore Pinecrest. She noticed a lively market square where vendors sold everything from fresh produce to handmade crafts. She watched a group of children playing a game of tag around a statue in the center. A sign caught her eye, "Help wanted, Pinecrest Library Assistant." She paused. A library assistant? She thought about her love for reading, about how books had once comforted her as a child. She wondered if she should stay here a while. She made her way to the library, a tall building with large windows. Inside, shelves reached from floor to ceiling, full of books. The smell of old paper filled the air. An elderly woman with half-moon glasses sat at a desk, writing in a ledger. Mary approached her, clearing her throat softly. "Excuse me," she said. "I saw the sign about needing help." The woman looked up, smiling gently. Yes. My name is Agatha, the head librarian," she said. "We are short-staffed and need someone to help organize books, greet visitors, and keep the place tidy." Mary's heart fluttered. She felt drawn to this quiet place of learning and stories. "I would like to apply," she said. "I have traveled a lot, but I am willing to learn." Agatha studied Mary's face. "You seem kind and sincere. We can do a trial period. Let us see if you enjoy the work," she said. "I can offer a small wage, and you can stay in one of the spare rooms upstairs if you wish. It is not fancy, but it is comfortable." Mary felt a wave of relief. "Thank you," she replied. She followed Agatha up a narrow staircase to a small room with a bed, a desk, and a window overlooking the pine trees. It was simple but cozy. Mary liked the peaceful atmosphere. That evening, she moved her few belongings into the room. She carefully placed the diary and her mother's necklace in a desk drawer. She felt her heart beat steadily as she realized she was about to settle down somewhere new. Days turned into weeks. Mary helped in the library each day, dusting shelves, stacking books, and greeting visitors. She learned to repair torn pages and how to gently clean delicate book covers. She enjoyed the stillness of the library. Sometimes, children came in for story time, and Mary would help Agatha read them fairy tales. Their wide-eyed wonder reminded Mary of simpler days. Agatha noticed Mary's gentle way with the children. One afternoon, after the little ones left, Agatha said, "Mary, you have a soft heart. The children adore you." Mary smiled sadly. "I try," she said. "But sometimes I feel I am losing that softness." Agatha tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Mary hesitated, then said, "I have had painful experiences in my past. They make me afraid to open my heart." Agatha's eyes filled with kindness. "You know, dear, the heart can be quite strong. It can heal from hurt. Sometimes it grows even kinder after being broken, if you let it." Mary nodded thoughtfully. She still felt the sting of betrayal, but she also felt the calm healing that came from her quiet library work. Over time, she grew fonder of Pinecrest. The townspeople were friendly, and she never felt judged or blamed for anything. She had her own small routines: wake up early, help Agatha open the library, read a book or two during breaks, close up in the evening, and enjoy a simple dinner. However, something still stirred inside her. It was a lingering anger at those who had turned her away. Part of her wanted to be kind and forgiving. Another part wanted to guard her heart fiercely and never trust again. One day, while tidying a shelf, she spotted a dusty volume titled Finding Peace After Loss. She pulled it out and opened it to a random page. A quote caught her eye: "Healing does not mean forgetting. It means growing stronger where you were once weak." Mary stared at the words. She felt a surge of emotion, thinking about how she had been weak once, standing in the storm alone. Now, she was stronger in many ways. But did that mean she should forgive? Should she trust again? She closed the book, heart pounding. That evening, she sat by her window and watched the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and gold. She could not deny that she felt calmer here, safer. Maybe, just maybe, she could allow a new sense of peace to grow. But the world had its own plans. Changes often come when we least expect them. And soon enough, Mary would face a moment that tested her resolve. She would have to decide whether to fully embrace kindness again or to let bitterness consume her heart. Mary's days in Pinecrest flowed smoothly. She found comfort in the library's quiet halls and in Agatha's gentle companionship. Occasionally, she even laughed with genuine warmth, especially when the children visited. The layers of hurt in her heart began to loosen, though they never fully went away. But life rarely stays calm forever. One afternoon, as Mary was restocking a shelf of children's stories, she heard a commotion outside. Loud voices echoed through the open library door. She set aside the books and walked outside, where a small crowd had gathered. A woman was speaking in a shaky voice. "They say bandits robbed Farmer Lucas on the North Road. They took all his supplies." Mary stepped closer. She remembered hearing rumors about bandits weeks ago in the inn. But Pinecrest had mostly been peaceful. Now, fear was spreading through the crowd. Agatha came out of the library and asked a concerned neighbor, "How is Farmer Lucas? Is he hurt?" The neighbor shook his head. "They say he is shaken but not badly injured. The bandits fled before harming him. But they took everything." Mary felt a pang of sympathy. Farmer Lucas was an older man with a gentle spirit. He sometimes brought fresh vegetables to the library as gifts. She remembered how kindly he spoke about his farm, his animals, and his love for the land. The crowd began to disperse. Agatha sighed deeply and turned to Mary. "It is sad news," she said. "I hope the bandits do not come closer to town." Mary nodded, feeling uneasy. She returned to her tasks, but her mind stayed on Farmer Lucas. She decided to visit him after she was done at the library. That evening, she walked to the north side of Pinecrest. A path led to a small farmhouse surrounded by fields. She saw smoke rising from a humble chimney. She knocked on the door. Farmer Lucas answered, surprise and relief in his eyes. He held a cloth to a small cut on his cheek. "Mary, what a pleasant surprise," he said in a weary voice. Mary smiled gently. "I heard what happened. I wanted to see if you needed help," she said. He invited her in. The house was simple, with a warm fireplace and a few wooden chairs. She saw worry lining his face. "I am thankful to be alive," Farmer Lucas said, sitting down with a tired sigh. "But I lost a cart of supplies I needed for the planting season. I do not know how I will manage without it." Mary felt a tug in her heart. She thought about the money she had saved from working at the library. It was not much, but maybe it could help. Yet, she also felt her own fears. She wanted to protect herself, to keep her guard up. Still, her kindness won out. "Maybe I can help gather donations," she said softly. "We can ask the townspeople to chip in some seeds or tools." Farmer Lucas's eyes lit up with gratitude. "You would do that for me?" he asked. Mary nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yes, I will talk to Agatha and some others. We can figure this out," she said, a small smile forming on her face. The next day, Mary spoke to Agatha, who was more than willing to help. They went around town, explaining Farmer Lucas's situation to neighbors. Many people gave what they could, small bags of seeds, a spare shovel or rake, and a bit of money. Mary felt a familiar warmth bloom in her chest. She was helping someone in need, just as she had always done before her past came crashing back. For the first time in a while, she felt closer to the old Mary who believed in kindness above all. When they delivered the donations to Farmer Lucas, he was overcome with emotion. "I do not know how to thank you," he said, tears in his eyes. "This means the world to me." Mary gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "We are a community," she said. "We have to look after each other." He nodded, smiling through his tears. "You have a good heart, Mary. Thank you for letting it shine." Later that evening, as Mary walked back to the library, she felt a mixture of feelings. She was proud to have helped. She saw how her kindness could truly change someone's life. But she also felt the old scar of betrayal throbbing in her chest, reminding her of how good deeds were once rewarded with cruelty. She reached her small room, sat on her bed, and touched her mother's necklace. She felt tears come to her eyes as she whispered, "Mother, am I being foolish again? What if people here turn against me one day?" She thought of the children who smiled at her in the library, the neighbors who welcomed her warmly, and Farmer Lucas's gratitude. They seemed truly kind. They did not blame her for anything. And yet, her past taught her that kindness could be met with betrayal. A quiet voice in her heart said, "But maybe not everyone is the same." Mary lay down, troubled, yet hopeful. She drifted to sleep thinking of ways to help the town and remain safe at the same time. She wondered if it was even possible to keep her heart open and still protect herself from future harm. Days passed, and Farmer Lucas slowly regained his footing. The seeds grew, and townspeople offered help with the field work. Mary continued to volunteer her time, planting small seedlings and ensuring the growing plants got enough water. In the middle of her tasks, she found moments of peace. She listened to birds singing among the tall pines. She savored the gentle warmth of the sun on her back. She laughed with children playing near the farm. And she felt herself changing again, yet another step away from the timid girl who fled the storm and the locked doors. She saw that there could be a balance between caution and kindness. She saw how her heart could hold both the scars of her past and the hope for a brighter tomorrow. One evening, as the sky turned gold, she walked back to the library. She felt content, carrying a basket of vegetables Farmer Lucas had given her as thanks. Entering her little room upstairs, she set the basket down and caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. She looked stronger, calmer. Her eyes no longer showed just fear. They showed a quiet determination. She understood that her kindness was part of who she was, but that did not mean she had to be weak. Yet, she could sense something stirring in the air, a feeling that life was about to throw her another test. She prayed silently that she would be ready for it. For now, she would rest, hold on to her kindness, and trust that she had the strength to face whatever came next. Early one morning, Mary woke to the sound of commotion outside the library. She quickly dressed and hurried downstairs. She saw people gathering in the street, anxiety on their faces. A town guard stood at the center, addressing the crowd. "The bandits have been spotted near the South Road," he said. "They're threatening to steal livestock and supplies if we do not pay them." A collective gasp rose from the townsfolk. Agatha clutched Mary's arm. "This is terrible," she whispered. "What shall we do?" Mary's heart pounded. She remembered how the bandits had robbed Farmer Lucas. Now, they were threatening everyone. She felt anger boil inside her. Why must good people be hurt by the cruelty of others? The guard continued, "We need volunteers to help strengthen the town's defenses. We also need a peaceful way to negotiate if possible. Anyone willing to help, please speak to the mayor." Mary felt an urge to step forward. She was not a fighter, but she knew how to stand strong for what was right. She told Agatha, "I will go to the mayor. Maybe I can offer some assistance." Agatha nodded, admiration in her eyes. "Be careful, Mary. We need calm and thoughtful people." Mary went to the mayor's office, a modest building near the market square. She found a small crowd there, farmers, merchants, a few traveling traders. They were discussing the bandit threat, voices raised. "Maybe we should just pay them off," said one man with trembling hands. "I do not want any trouble." Another woman shook her head firmly. "No, that will only make them come back for more," she said. Mary quietly listened before stepping in. "Maybe we can gather safely in one spot, protect our livestock, and talk to the bandits peacefully at first," she suggested. A traveler scoffed. "Peaceful talk? Bandits only want one thing, our valuables." Mary felt the sting of those words, but she held on to her belief that sometimes people do wrong out of desperation, not pure evil. She thought of how her old town's fear and rumors led them to treat her cruelly. She wondered if there was a chance the bandits might be reasoned with. The mayor, a tall man with a gentle face, cleared his throat. "We need a plan," he said. "We cannot simply allow them to roam free, but we also want to avoid violence if possible." In the end, a plan was formed. The town would gather in the main square, with some guards posted at the outskirts. The mayor would attempt to negotiate with the bandit leader when they arrived. If that failed, the guards would step in. Mary offered to stand with the mayor and speak calmly, hoping her gentle nature might help. The mayor gave her a thoughtful nod. "I appreciate your willingness, Mary," he said. Morning turned to afternoon as the townspeople prepared. Carts of valuables were hidden away in barns. Livestock was herded into fenced areas near the heart of the town. Guards were placed to watch the roads. Mary waited with the mayor, her heart racing. She felt fear gnaw at her stomach. What if these bandits are violent? But she also felt a strong desire to protect this community that had welcomed her. At last, near sunset, a group of rough-looking men and women rode into town on horseback. They wore tattered clothes and stern expressions. The leader, a tall figure with a scar across his cheek, spoke in a booming voice. "We have come for our payment. Show us the goods." The mayor stepped forward, hands raised in a calming gesture. "We do not want trouble," he said firmly. "Why do you demand payment from us?" The leader sneered. "We live in the mountains. There is no work, no food. This town has everything. You should share your wealth." Mary took a deep breath, stepping up beside the mayor. "We can find a better way," she said quietly. "We can trade or offer help if you are in need. But stealing and threatening only lead to more sorrow." The bandit leader turned to her, eyes narrowing. "And who are you?" Mary felt her knees tremble, but she stood tall. "I am Mary, a helper at the library," she said. "I came from a place where I learned how cruel people can be, and I know what it feels like to be pushed aside. But that does not make it right to harm others." Some of the bandits shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. The leader snorted. "Words won't fill our bellies," he retorted. Mary bit her lip. She reached into her bag, which held some of her savings, money she had put away while working at the library. She held out a small pouch of coins. "This is all I have," she said softly. "It is not much, but I offer it to you, not as a payment, but as a gesture of kindness. Take it and consider talking with us about a real solution." The leader hesitated, his gaze flickering to the pouch. The townspeople watched in tense silence. Then he reached out and snatched it, opening it to count the coins. A moment passed. One of his companions muttered, "Boss, maybe we should talk." The leader shot him a glare. But then he looked at Mary again, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. His grip on the pouch relaxed a bit. "We are hungry," he admitted in a quieter tone. "We lost our homes in a fire last year. No one helped us." Mary felt a pang. She understood that feeling, needing help and finding none. Gently she said, "We can help you. We can share food. We can try to find a way for you to work here too. But not with threats and fear." Slowly, the leader nodded, as if something in Mary's words touched him. He turned to his group. "Stand down," he said. "We will hear what they have to say." The townspeople let out a collective sigh of relief. The guards lowered their weapons. The mayor offered to meet with the bandits in the town hall. He invited them to sit, share a meal, and discuss how they might rebuild their lives without resorting to stealing. Mary stood near the doorway, her heart still pounding. She felt tears welling up, a mix of relief and deep emotion. She had stood up with kindness in her heart, and it had worked, at least for now. The meeting lasted long into the night. Plans were made to give the bandits a chance to earn money and food by helping in the fields or doing small jobs in town. In return, the bandits would return the stolen supplies, including those taken from Farmer Lucas. When the meeting ended, the bandit leader approached Mary. He held out the small pouch of coins she had given him. "Keep this," he said gruffly, pressing it back into her hand. "I see now that not all people are cruel. Maybe I can learn to be better too." Mary blinked in surprise, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, then walked away, joining his companions. Outside, the moonlight shone on the pine trees. The air felt crisp and cool. Agatha came over, hugging Mary. "You were brave, my dear," she said, her voice trembling with pride. Mary hugged her back, her heart full. She realized she had changed. She was not the naive girl who trusted blindly, but she also had not let bitterness steal her compassion. Somehow, she had found a balance. In that moment, Mary felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her past no longer chained her heart. She understood that pain could make people close themselves off, but it could also make them kinder. She had chosen kindness. The end.